for continuous progress. You can go on investigating. Same truth. Because truth is never old. It is ever aging, but ever old. Purana is the word in Sanskrit. Purana, we call it as ancient. Actually, its literal meaning is Pura api, Nava eveti Purana. Though old, it is ever fresh, ever new. These are ancient truths which are eternally new. Today's human being also the same truth. Therefore, India developed its culture based upon this supreme vision of the Vedic sages that there are two departments of science, namely external world and what lies above the sensory level. This classification is given in the Upanishads themselves. In the Mundaka Upanishad, a student goes to a teacher, "Sir, please teach me. I want to learn. I want to develop knowledge." And the Guru tells, two sciences are there, acquired by every human being. Dve vidye veditavye itihasmayat brahmavido vadanti parachaiva aparacha. Great sages tell us, those who know the truth of the ultimate reality, that there are two sciences to be acquired by every human being. One is called para science, the other is called apara science. One is called higher science, the other is called ordinary science. Ordinary science is called physical science. Higher science is called the science of spirituality in today's language, what lies above the sensory level. That is what is given in the Mundaka Upanishad itself. So here in this Brihadaranyaka, we are in the presence of great thinkers, great sages, mind you, both men and women. Women also are there in the Upanishads. Tremendous position of women as challenging even great intellectual men in the Upanishad. This Upanishad has got four such. One is Yajnavalkya, a brilliant mind, a masculine figure. Janaka, the king, the emperor, also a great philosopher, also masculine. Then Gargi, a brilliant philosopher and questioner and seeker of truth, a woman. And the other is Maitreyi, the wife of Yajnavalkya, a great spiritual seeker. These characters you come across in the Upanishads. We don't know anything more about them. They are just there. But what is most important is the subject they handle, which is of universal significance. That's why it's called a science. The word Vidya in Sanskrit means science. Remember that word. Vidya doesn't mean tidbit of this knowledge, that knowledge. Vidya means knowledge or science. Even the word science, what does it mean? Knowledge. Science only means knowledge. But we add it to say verifiable, verified knowledge. Similarly, Vidya also the same. So, this Vidya belongs to Apara and Para. Apara, ordinary. Para, higher. Sensory level is ordinary. They are dealing with things. But in Paravidya, you deal with the perceiver of things, the knower of things, the observer of things, a new dimension above the sensory level. And both these constitute the totality of human knowledge. Remember that. Totality of human knowledge belongs to the world of object, the world of subject. Vishaya and Vishayi. See technical terms used by Vedanta. Vishaya means sense objects. Vishayi, the seer, the observer of sense objects. Vishaya, Vishayi. There is nothing beyond these two. Such a comprehensive mind you find in the Upanishads, that this tremendous development of higher science in India, Paravidya, was not against the Aparavidya, but a continuation of Aparavidya itself. That's what we are telling today. Your physical science, you continue. You must come to this higher science, this Paravidya. So, we call it combination of both Paravidya, Aparavidya is known as Brahmavidya. Brahman stands for the totality of reality. What a wonderful concept. Paravidya, Aparavidya. You combine them, make a synthesis of them, what do you get? Brahmavidya, the science of total reality. And that Brahmavidya is highly praised in the Mundaka Upanishad by saying, tab Brahma Vidyam Sarva Vidya Pratishtham. The Guru taught the disciple that Brahma Vidya. What is that Brahma Vidya? Sarva Vidya Pratishtha. The basis of every other science. That is Brahma Vidya. The totality of reality is the basis of every aspect of reality. So you know Brahma Vidya, you know everything. Brahma means the totality. So Brahma Vidya is highly praised in the Upanishads, and in these Upanishads you find Brahma Vidya is also called Adhyatma Vidya, Atma Vidya, science of the self, because Brahman is the self of the universe, and the universe itself is a manifestation of Brahman. Self and not self become unified in Brahman. The external, internal become unified in Brahman. That word Brahman, that word Atman, you will find repeatedly in these Upanishads, one dealing with the totality of reality seen from the outside, the other dealing with the reality seen from the inside, and the beautiful conclusion that this and that are one. Atman, Brahman are one. Pure consciousness is the nature of the Atman. Pure consciousness is the nature of Brahman. That is the subject you will study here in the next few months, may take in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Beautiful passages full of challenging statements are there. Some of them looking so revolutionary, because this is a science which has tremendous energy within it. Even today, a human being energetic, where from that energy comes? Muscle, nerve, simple ordinary mind, or some deeper level. The more the energy, the more deeper is the level from which it comes. Surface levels get only ordinary energy. Deeper levels, greatest energy will come. The energy of a laborer, energy coming in the form of Jesus or Ramakrishna. What is the source of that energy compared to this energy? All are energies, but sources are so subtle, so deep in certain cases, some very gross in ordinary cases. Therefore, this Brahma Vidya, which includes all Vidyas, Sarva Vidya Pratishtha, philosophy is described in Western thought today as the science of sciences, the basic science of all sciences. That's called philosophy. That kind of philosophy you don't get in normal books on philosophy. You get only academic philosophy, speculative philosophy. It may be so, like that. But when you come to this, you are in the presence of a profound science of total reality. We have to understand the significance of that wonderful situation, that the sages could think of such brilliant things, taking in the whole world of knowledge. Brahmarola writes on Vivekananda's life, where he says, Vivekananda's Vedanta may not be accepted by modern science, but if Vedanta accepts modern science, it has a place in it for every sincere seeker of truth, whatever be the field in which it seeks. See the way in which he has put the greatness of Vedanta, that it can include science. Science cannot include Vedanta at present, but I am sure physical science will at least look up and say, there is a higher science, point the finger to you, I have given you what I can give you, now go higher, go higher. That state is coming to physical science probably towards the next century. Already it has started a little. A scientist will say, I have told you what is available in my world of investigation, but it doesn't exhaust everything. There's something higher, go further. Knowledge search is continuous, cannot stop here. In this way, there will be a place for this higher thinking on the basis of that totality of vision that was given in this Brahma Vidya, or the science of sciences. We shall enter into the study of a few of the texts. Some of the texts are not of much interest to us. Lot of old mythology is there. Lot of old stories, other things are there. They are all part of the old book. But here and there, you come across some profound observations, teachings, which are the basis of the science of Vedanta and philosophy of Vedanta, which the world knows today as something like Mount Everest among all the mountains of the world. We shall enter into this study From today, we have already given the introduction, and from next Sunday, we shall enter into the study. We shall spend a minute in silence and then disperse. Before that, I wish to say, usually, we used to recite a particular Shanti mantra during the Sunday discourses on the Gita. Sahana bhavatu, sahana bhunaktu. That is in many Upanishads, that is the Shanti mantra. But this Upanishad has another Shanti mantra which I recited in the beginning. Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vishyate. Many modern scientists are fascinated by this wonderful verse. Nature of infinity. From the infinite has come this universe. From the infinite, having taken this infinite of universe, what remains? Infinite alone remains. Purna alone remains. There is no particular fraction in the Purna. That kind of wonderful idea. Brahman is Purnam. Brahma Purnam is the language used in Vedanta. That Purnam, this world has come from that Purnam. This is Purnam, that is Purnam. From Purnam, Purnam has come. Having taken out Purnam from the Purnam, Purnam alone remains. You can take for yourself what this wonderful verse means. Many have tried to comprehend it. Mathematicians have tried to comprehend it. And here is that wonderful text which I recited at the beginning of today's discourse. We will spend a minute in silence and then we shall meet next Sunday. Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Last Sunday, I gave an introduction to this Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka, and all Upanishads. It is only in the context of advanced thought of today that we can see the tremendous power of thought and experience conveyed by the Upanishads. I try to give that scientific background where we study the external world, try to understand its nature, and at the end of it, it remains a mystery. And over and above that mystery, a new mystery begins to shine, the mystery of man himself, man the observer, man the knower. That is a great investigation taken up by the sages of the Upanishads a few thousand years ago, and their discoveries remain as a tremendous heritage for all humanity, not only for us in India. But as I said, these are all unknown during all these thousands of years. They were treated as rahasya, mystery, secret, meant only for a few people. Today Vivekananda comes and says, I preach nothing but the Upanishads. And in this great literature, one great value shines all the time: fearlessness and freedom. How to make this human being fearless and free. And that is his or her own divine nature. Only he doesn't know it. She doesn't know it. In this modern age, I shall spread this message, Swamiji said, all over the world. Therein lies strength enough to invigorate the whole world. I am quoting his own words. In the Upanishads lies strength enough to invigorate the whole world. That is the message Swamiji gave in all his writings and lectures. It shall not remain a mystery hereafter. People will study, and I am glad to find they are studying the Upanishads and the Gita. Our people have been kept down, away from all these great ideas for a few thousand years. Women cannot utter anything from the Vedas. They cannot hear anything from the Vedas. All these discriminations were there in the past ages, but they are ended today. All are welcome to the highest thought available, and whatever you can make out of these thoughts, do it for yourself. Even 1 ounce of it is good for you, says Vivekananda today, said Gita ages ago. I can imagine if 20% of the people of India, especially our women, will study the Upanishads and the Gita and try to mold their life according to the teachings there, what height of greatness will come to the nation for all the people through their influence. That is the future opening up before us today. And the whole world is the audience for the Upanishads and the Gita. The whole world, according to my repeated experiences in all parts of the world. Today we enter into the text of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. In the first book, as I said last Sunday, a lot of the mythical, ritualistic portion of the Vedas, earlier portions of the Vedas, they come into the first book of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Here and there, a profound thought, a profound philosophical and spiritual utterance also you get in the first book. But from the second book, practically all through, except towards the end, it is all profound philosophy and spirituality. Truths communicated about human nature and destiny for human beings to live by and to check the truth for themselves. In the first book, in the very second chapter, we have a beautiful prayer which has become universal today. All over the world, people utter this particular prayer that occurs in this book in the second chapter, the third chapter and third Brahmana, 28 verse. There you will find, we have repeated this several times at the time of the Gita discourse also. The Upanishad says, Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. From the unreal, lead us to the real. Asato ma sadgamaya, asat, unreal. Sat, real, or what is true. Our whole search is to see the truth, to experience the truth. And the prayer goes, take me from the unreal to the real. Asato ma sadgamaya. Then the second is similar to the first. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. From darkness, lead me to light. From ignorance, lead me to knowledge and illumination. That is a wonderful second item of the prayer. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. And lastly comes mrityor ma amritangamaya. From death, lead us to immortality. Every human heart is praying for it. And we have to realize that we are in the world of the mortal. But within ourselves, there is something immortal. That message has been conveyed by several Upanishads. Is there anything else? Has repeated the same truth, that there is some focus of immortality in this human being. Everything is mortal about him. But within him, within her, there is a focus of immortality, which will be described in the course of the Upanishads. So, this prayer, Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. Tamas is the word for darkness in Sanskrit. Also, inertia, that is tamas. We don't want to be inert. Any material object is inert. We don't want to be inert like that. So, tamas is inertness and darkness. Darkness of ignorance. We want light and more light. The whole heart of man seeks for light. We may be in darkness for a short period, but long period darkness nobody will like. We want light, we want light. The prayer of the human heart everywhere. And so, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. And finally, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Mrityu is the word for death. Amritam, deathlessness or immortality. English word mortal comes from the Sanskrit word mrityu, mr, to die. The same root is there. So this is a prayer, not of a particular people, but all human hearts everywhere. Only in this Upanishad, it has been so briefly expressed and so beautifully expressed. In a short prayer, all the aspirations of the human heart have been included there. Darkness to light, untruth to truth, death to immortality. All the aspirations of the heart of every human being are included in this little prayer. This just comes in the midst of the third chapter of the first book of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Now, after saying this, we go a few more verses. There are a lot of mythical things here which will be of no use at this time. They had their own part to play at one time. Only wherever these wonderful spiritual truths are uttered, we shall spend our time with them. And in the first book, it is just slowly taking us from all these myths and legends, etc., into the spiritual dimension of Vedanta, a profound philosophy. And the first utterance will come later on. It says, the concept man and woman are equal, two halves of one unit. That is the constant idea in India. And that is expressed in a particular passage here, that same divine person divided himself into two halves. One became man, one became woman. Each one is incomplete without the other, like two parts of a split pea. That pea, that seed, is split into two. Each is needed to complement the other. So also are men and women in this world. This teaching of equality is a tremendous teaching. We have to implement it in our society, in our life. When I address audiences in America and Europe and Australia, I tell them that you are struggling for women's liberation. And some success has come. But some big obstruction is there in front of you, namely the myth that governs your life. Our reason and myth both conflict. In such conflict, reason doesn't win. It is myth that wins, because the myth is influencing the whole of the subconscious of the human being. And therefore, the West has a particular myth. Until you remove that myth and bring some other myth, you will not be able to fully achieve that sense of liberation. I used to make little humorously a remark saying, in the West, we go by the old biblical teaching that God created Adam, and when he was asleep, God took a rib of Adam and created Eve out of this. So woman is only a rib of man. When I speak to the audiences there, I said, a rib of man, and that too a dispensable rib. After giving it that rib, man did not become less. So that is the myth behind you. You are only a small rib. How can you get full liberation, full recognition from man? I will give you a better myth than I told this story from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Man and woman are two equal halves. So they are just equal. Then I, for fun, will say, even though the Western man knows that you women are only a rib of man, just to humor you, they call you the better half. We don't call you better half. We call you just half, nothing more than half. That's how we'll say. That is a great teaching. So this teaching can inspire us in creating a society where human dignity of men and women can be maintained. That will come along with another teaching, and that is going to be central teaching of the Upanishads. The infinite nature of man, the Atman, is beyond sex differentiation. The Atman has no sex, masculine, feminine, only in the body. But in the Atman, there is no sex at all. You go beyond your limitation, masculine limitation, feminine limitation. That is human evolution, and realize the infinite Atman, beyond all these gender distinctions. So here is that shloka. It says, Sa imameva atmanam dvetha apadayat. The same Atman was made into two, divided into two. Tatascha, from that, patischa patnicha abhavatam. Pati and Patni came from that single unit. One half, the other half. Tasma idam ardha begalamiva swa iti hasmaha. Just like two halves of a split pea is man and woman. Each is incomplete without the other. That is very important idea. And so there is perfect equality given in this teaching. And we try to manifest it in our society. We have not succeeded in spite of all the high teachings and great characters among the women, from the Upanishads down to our Puranas. We have not a society where women are honored so well. So much of discrimination is there, and today there is plenty of it, along with all the ignorance and superstition coming to us. But when we build a new society based upon the message of the Upanishads, strengthened by modern scientific and socio-political thought, we shall transform the whole situation. This is what you get in Swami Vivekananda literature, practical Vedanta. How to apply this great teaching to make for happy interhuman relations so that each one will get fulfilled in life. Why should I get fulfilled and destroy somebody's fulfillment? That's not correct. I shall get it, you also will get it. This capacity must come to us from philosophy and teachings. That's what you get in the Upanishads. Therefore, this is an important item just coming in the very beginning itself. Later on you will find great women characters, as I said last Sunday, like Maitreyi, Gargi and others. The earlier Vedas also, there were some great women characters, great poets among women. You will get it in the Rig Veda and other Vedas. So here, this Upanishad continues to introduce us to the subject of Brahman and Atman, the reality behind this universe, reality within you and me. That is the search. Whatever is unreal, we reject. Whatever is real, that we affirm. And that is the purpose for which all these earlier paragraphs are being produced here. Now comes Tadhyadam. The nature of this cosmic evolution. Today's cosmology, astrophysics, tells us that this variegated universe was not there at the beginning. Everything was singular, one. There was not many in the beginning. That one became the many. And that is preceded by what they call a big bang, an explosion. Out of that explosion came all the diversities of the universe for millions of years, merely cosmic evolution. Then another few millions of years, organic evolution, when the living cell appeared, and finally human evolution in our time. This is what modern science will tell us. And exactly this was told by the Upanishads 5,000 years ago, that this entire universe was absolutely one and non-dual in the beginning. The first sentence says here, what is 1, 4 and 7 in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Tadhi idam tarhi avyakritam asit tannama rupabhyam eva vyakriyata aso nama asam rupa iti. In the beginning, the whole universe was undifferentiated. There's a wonderful language. Undifferentiated. Avyakrita. Vyakrita means differentiation. Avyakrita, non-differentiation. Everything was undifferentiated. And that one became differentiated into various things with a particular name and a particular form. Nama, Rupa. What a tremendous universal thinking you find in this conclusion. What is the difference between things? Only Nama and Rupa, name and form. Substance is the same, but Nama Rupa become different. A piece of gold A goldsmith makes various types of ornaments. What are the differences between them? Name and form. So far as gold is concerned, it is one and the same. But what differentiates them is their name and their form. That's all what is there. Similarly, the whole universe becomes differentiated into name and form from originally what was absolutely undifferentiated. Tarhi avyagritam asid. It was all avyagrita. Then tannama rupabhyam eva vyakriyata. It differentiated itself into different names and different forms. Asavanama idam rupa iti. It is this name, it is this form. That is how the things became differentiated, and we study them accordingly. Tadadam etarhi. Even today, it is all difference only through name and form. The whole universe, wherever you look, from that original stuff, the background material, as scientists will say today, all these differences have come by a label of a name, a label of a form. These two. If you can transcend name and form, you will come to the same original stuff itself. That's the language used here. In all the astrophysics, you will find the same. From that one, after the explosion, slowly differentiation began to set up. In the first few seconds, there were no electrons and protons, nothing. Absolutely unified energy. Then slowly, these differentiations started. You could call them by a name and give them a form. This is what is happening up to this grossest nature which you find today. Evolution coming to the human level. And we are studying the subject. At the human level, evolution becomes self-aware, self-conscious. You can understand evolution. Whereas all these millions of years, evolution went on. There was nobody to say what is evolution. Nobody could understand it until the human mind came. Now we understand, yes, there has been this evolution from the one to the many. But the one is supreme. Then comes the second conclusion later on. Ultimately, the whole many will go back to the one. What a wonderful idea. From one, the many came. Unto one, the many will return. That is well established in ancient Upanishads and the same in modern scientific thought as well. The only difference is the nature of that primordial stuff, that background material. To the modern scientist, it's just piece of matter, absolutely inert matter. That's all. But for the Vedanta, it was pure consciousness. The whole universe was resolved into pure consciousness at the end of a particular period of cosmic evolution. Then that pure consciousness emerged as name and form in a new kind of cosmic evolution. That's what is going on now. So consciousness is the central truth about this universe. We use the word Brahman to declare the nature of that consciousness, just a name. The word Atman also is used. The central principle is it is the nature of pure consciousness, not something inert. From the inert, this evolution cannot have come, which Vedanta is going to tell modern scientists also. They are also slowly coming into that understanding, as I told in some of the Gita lectures here. And last year, Fred Hoyle came to Hyderabad, a famous British astronomer, astrophysics, physicist. His earlier book was entirely materialistic. He had 4 lectures in the BBC, in which, as I'm telling 40 years ago, there he mentions absolutely material stuff, that background material. That's all what was there. Now he writes a new book, The Intelligent Universe. There is intelligence in this universe. You can't get rid of that wonderful truth. So I met him and told him, he said, yes, I'm fully believing that intelligence is a component of the original stuff of the universe. Therefore, you find it also in the cosmos, which came out of that original stuff. Now, this is why the Vedantic teaching of Brahman, as Tao of Physics has said, is more comprehensive than modern astrophysics concept of the ultimate reality. More comprehensive, because it explains both inert as well as intelligent aspect of the cosmic evolution. Otherwise, only inert things can be explained by that background material which is inert. But this explains both. Condensed consciousness, concreted consciousness can become rocks and tables and chairs. Consciousness can develop into all levels of experience and existence. Therefore, That Brahman, that Atman, is being introduced in this Upanishad to begin with. That behind this universe, everything was Brahman. He will say later on. Here it merely says, Tadyam etarhi. Even now, we discriminate things by labeling them a name and a form. Nama rupa abhyam. That's language. Take, for example, water in the ocean. It's all water. But when it becomes a wave, you call it a wave. It has a form, it has a name. But what is it truly? Nothing but water. Therefore, Nama Rupa makes for differences between things. What is truly there is one single reality. We are in search of that. The one behind the many is the search of all knowledge. Scientific knowledge, spiritual knowledge. We want to know what is the one behind this many. We do see the many. And as you study deeper and deeper, the many begin to point out there's some unity behind this. Every science, physics, chemistry, botany, zoology, all this astronomy, everything. Every science will be resolved into the one. When we come to the human level of evolution, this capacity comes to that cosmos. Cosmos itself doesn't know itself. But when you become human being in evolution, you get the capacity to ask this question, why it is many? Is there a one behind the many? This question you can ask and get the answer. That is human uniqueness. And we experienced it ages ago. We are experiencing it today in modern scientific context. So he said, Sa esha iha pravishtaha. He says, this whole universe, with its various names and forms, millions and millions of names and forms, find it as a variegated system around you. But don't forget, there is a unity behind it. That unity is still there. We have to search for it and we shall discover it. So he says, Sa esha iha pravishtaha. That is the sentence here. That one has entered into the many. See the language. Sa iha pravishtaha. That one has entered into the many. How can we understand it? By search, we will understand. That's the language. The gold has entered into the bangle, the chain, in all of them. They are all different names and forms. Gold has entered into all of them. In this way, sa iha, esha iha pravishta, you say, up to the language used here. Take this human being. The ultimate reality has entered into all of us. Up to what? Anatebhyaha, up to the tip of the nail. Everywhere you will find the presence of the one in the many. A very picturesque way of putting it. Anatebhyaha, he says, pravishtaha. Yatha, an example is given. Shuraha, shuradhane, avahitaha syat. Just like a razor is hidden in the box into which you put the razor, the razor container. Just put it there. You cannot see it, but it is there. The razor is there inside the razor container. Similarly, that infinite reality behind this universe is there in every name and form in this universe, including this human system. Shuradhane avahitaha. Similarly, Vishwambharova, Vishwambhara Kulaye. Take a piece of wood. Fire is there, hidden inside. Every piece of that wood is full of fire, but hidden. You can't see it. Similarly, that one is present in the many. This is the profoundest observation of the ancient sages, only being repeated with new emphasis by modern scientific thought. Vishwambharova, Vishwambhara Kulaye. And yet, Tanna Pashyanti, we are not able to see that one. We only see the many. That is our normal state of human mind. We cannot see the one. It needs a searching, an inquiry. Tanna Pashyanti. What a wonderful idea. We are all different, and yet we are essentially one. That truth we don't understand. The challenge of human knowledge is to understand that truth. Tanna Pashyanti, because it is not visible to the sensory system. When there is a razor inside the razor's cage, you cannot see the razor with the senses. You have to use your mind to understand it, even open it and see it is there. all that is needed. But as it is hidden, you don't actually see it. Similarly, that infinite one is in me, in you. How can we know it? Not with these senses. Senses are weak. They can see only difference, only name and form. No sense organ can discover anything beyond name and form. That will come later in the second and third books. The limitation of the human senses and the human mind conditioned by the senses. That will be taught to us later. In fact, throughout the Upanishads, you'll find this emphasis. You are in search for a reality that no sense organ can reveal. Never. Don't depend upon the sense organs. When you finished your physical science, you have to say goodbye to your sense organ. How to know who is the observer? Sense organs cannot tell you, cannot give you any indication. That's language. Go beyond the sense organ. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. We have tried it. You can also try. If that is a challenge coming from the Upanishads. All this will be put in wonderful language later on. As the Taittiriya Upanishad said, Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. That reality from which speech and thought recoil, not being able to comprehend it. Speech means all sense organs, and thought is mind. Mind and sense organs cannot comprehend that reality. That is the subject of search. The wonderful search. Everybody will be fascinated by that search. Our people are really fascinated by that search. That's what you get. The impression from the Upanishads, a tremendous search for a profound truth. Everybody will like to do that. We don't mind our difficulty. We don't mind our failure. But we'll continue to search. I often compare this kind of search with what they had in America in the last century. Discovery of gold in the western part of America, middle and western part. People from the eastern part heard that gold is available. Then they had a gold rush in American history. Gold rush. There is gold there. They leave everything and go, treading all the way, trudging, and die on the way, suffer on the way. But I will get gold. I will get gold. If the object is such a precious thing as gold, we don't mind difficulty. We don't mind suffering. We don't mind even death. That's the human nature. Similarly, if that most precious thing you are in search of is your own infinite dimension, ever pure, ever free, ever immortal, who will not pay all price to get into it, to get at it? So he is presenting this idea, the one behind the many, as something meant to be sought and discovered for yourself. Within this human body is that Atman present, that Atman which was behind the universe before manifestation started. So he says here, Vishwambharo, Tamna Pashyanti. We don't see this Atman with these eyes, with these sensory systems. Agristno Hisa. When you actually see day-to-day operations in life, the eye can see, the ear can hear, all this we see. Well, these are all wonderful. Various operations of going on in the body, various processes are going on. Nature's energy also, various processes are there. But we do not understand the unity behind all these processes. We are confined to one particular process. That is not correct. There is energy behind all these processes. That energy is the unity. These are the multiplicity. Look at the body. There is some energy functioning through the eye. There is another energy functioning through the ear. Actually, they are one and the same energy. We call it prana. Same prana functions through the eye, through the ear, through all the senses. But we don't understand this separately. We are confined to the particular process, not confined to the truth of the one behind the various processes around us. That need seeking. Merely by looking at things, you cannot get this idea.